think as providers, whether clinically or, in an outpatient setting or a community setting or a school setting, we're all still providing care. And so we need to also make sure we're taking the time to provide care to ourselves.
Do you ever have so many questions and no one to ask, so they're just wasting away on Google searches you'll forget about in an hour or so?
We had that same problem, and that's why we created the RD2BE podcast, a resource for dietetic and nutrition students looking for answers that their peers don't have.
We are students Macy and Emily and registered dietitian Carl Barnes. We engage in conversations and learn from RDs.
Join us weekly as we gain insight into the unique journeys of registered dietitians all over the country.
Welcome back to another week of the RD2BE podcast. I'm your registered dietitian host, Carl Barnes. This is our weekly podcast where we sit down with a different awesome registered dietitian nutritionist to showcase the diversity of opportunity in the profession and really dismantle the notion that there's a traditional career path. Really excited to be sitting down with Liz Sullivan today from UC San Francisco to talk a little bit about being a DI director as well as a DTR supervisor. So really excited to have you here. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
And I'm Jenna, your RD2BE. So Liz, could you give us a little background into your education towards becoming an RD?
Sure. Long, winding path for me. In high school, I loved to read. I was the editor of my high school newspaper. And so I went on to be an English major, and kind of without a thought to my future career, it just made sense to me. And then I got out of school and I did a variety of jobs, including being a program coordinator and an event planner, and then ultimately got involved in marketing and communications at a company that did a lot with sustainable food and health. I also moved to San Francisco at that time and started going to the farmers market and doing a lot of reading. And I wanted to pursue something that kind of integrated food and health and was more people focused than the kind of computer focused work that I was doing. So I decided well, I'm sitting at a hospital today, so now we're going to have some overhead pages involved. But so I decided to pursue a master's in nutrition. In my undergraduate studies, I had done almost no science or math. So my only science class was physics for poets. And so I had to take 2 years of prereqs in order to even start applying to graduate school. And then ultimately I did my MS DPD at Bastyr University outside of Seattle, and then went on to do my internship here at UCSF.
Awesome. And so during those 2 years of prereqs, was there anything that you did career-wise or job-wise that kind of helped align with your career goal to becoming an RD? Or what did you kind of do in that filler time?
Yeah, I mean, I think I took some of the skills that that I had already had. So I did like a social media internship for like a community nutrition site. I worked for my old company doing some like data entry. So I took whatever opportunity was kind of available to me at the time. During prereqs, I really focused on school because, like I said, math and science wasn't something I had a ton of experience with. So I had 10 classes to take. And so I mostly focused on that, with then projects here and there.
As you should, especially because math and science, especially concentrated, that's definitely a lot to take up. And so for, any students that aren't really having math and science as their strong suit, but they really want to become a registered dietitian, do you have any tips and advice or things that you learned along the way of kind of honing in on those math and sciences that you learned and kind of would want to share with some students?
Yeah, I think for me, I liked it more than I thought I did. I think coming back to it a little bit later, I was like, oh, this is actually, this is great. This is fun. This is problem solving. And I think one of the things that I did compared to my first time around in school, I found study groups. I found people to work with, and I made efforts to work with them and talk to them, and talking things out is how I solve a lot of problems and understand things. It also helps to when your classmate has a question and you explain something, usually that helps you understand it better. So I think that that's the major change that I made in prereqs and graduate school, was finding people to work with and not just trying to muscle through it on my own.
Definitely. And before you deciding to take those prereqs, and you kind of described what made you decide to become a registered dietitian, but do you by any chance remember a definitive point where you were like, I want to become a registered dietitian, or was it a couple of experiences that made you lead into that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I honestly, before I started pursuing this path, I don't think I knew what a dietitian was. And I'm sure that there are other folks, I've heard that from other students who are, as they start to explore it. So I was exploring kind of other wellness, nutrition, coaching paths, and landed on someone who had gone to Bastyr for their MSDPD and did an informational interview with them. And but particularly at that point in my life and career, I was very focused on like holistic wellness and health and thinking about other, all kind of modalities. And so when I talked to this person who had gone to Bastyr and they were actively working as a dietitian, I was like, oh, I think that this is the path that I want to take, to be able to to have all the options available. And dietetics is such a varied field. And so I wanted to be able to explore all the options.
For sure. And so you've actually held a lot of different roles in UC San Francisco. And so do you have a specific position that kind of got your foot in the door with UC San Francisco, or how exactly did you get involved so much in the system?
Yeah, well, I did my internship here. And so I came here and did my dietetic internship. I left and went to another institution to be a per diem dietitian. And then ultimately I came back as a per diem dietitian, which is often the path for a lot of folks in clinical work. And from there, I just kept exploring opportunities that were interesting to me and getting involved with colleagues and projects that were interesting to me, which has built to kind of my current roles now. So I wouldn't say it was a specific position within UCSF, so much as it was taking the opportunities that I saw available, and using all my other like life and work experience and leveraging those skills in my role as a clinician. I think it's easy to get kind of one track mind about clinical work, but there's a lot of other kinds of skills that can be really helpful in clinical work and quality improvement projects and leadership that come from all other kinds of settings. So I tried to leverage those as much as I could.
Absolutely. And could you give us like a little handful of those skills that you did use from your past experiences in the clinical setting?
Sure thing. So, I mean, I have done everything from being a cashier at Home Depot. I was an event planner. I was a program coordinator. I was in marketing and communications, and all of that plays into everything that I do now. So, customer service skills. When you're at bedside, when you're talking to nurses and you're talking to doctors and you're talking to family members, that's customer service skills, right? Event planning, being able to think on your feet, being able to make quick decisions, coordinating a lot of logistics. I think that plus my program coordinator role, where I was doing a lot with students, and a lot of kind of organizing and supporting students, has led me into this, internship director role. And marketing communications has my communication skills, both in writing and verbally, and all of that has helped much more than I anticipated, especially through the application process and through graduate school and into my career here as well.
Definitely. And I think that's a good thing for students, especially if they don't have a traditional background in dietetics, kind of if they feel like, oh, I have to completely restart my career. No, you can actually take a lot of different skills and things from your past career or past experiences to apply as a dietitian. And so if I'm not mistaken, right now, especially in San Francisco, you're the DI director, DTR supervisor, and also, like you said, per diem dietitian.
I'm a clinical dietitian, not per diem,
Gotcha.
because that's a job classification.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm a clinical dietitian and I kind of act as per diem because I hop into different roles where I'm needed.
Gotcha. And so with all three of those roles, how do you balance and like kind of limit stress and burnout from balancing so many different roles in that institution?
Yeah, so I think as far as balancing the different roles, there are high priority items, right, in each role. So it's not always possible to push things down to the bottom of the list, but really I collaborate with other leaders in my department, my co-supervisors, my supervisor, and the leadership of our department to figure out what are our priorities as a group. So being able to prioritize that. How can we streamline workflow and projects? I think all of us tend to want to put a lot of effort into things. And if we can work together to streamline things and also break up tasks, I think that makes things more efficient. I use my calendar to track my whole personal and professional life to make sure that things don't fall through the cracks. Even if it's like just a quick to do, I set 15 minutes on my calendar and I put it on there because then I make sure I don't miss it. I've also started writing my to-do lists on Post-it notes because I heard one of my favorite fitness instructors said that we often overestimate what we can do in a day, but underestimate what we can do in a year. So I figure if it doesn't fit on a Post-it note, I probably can't do it today. I can't, if it's more tasks than that, it's probably not getting done, which has really helped me, I think. I think to the second part of your question around like balance, like work-life balance and burnout. I think that, and I think this applies to me. I think that's when I think back to my graduate school and the early part of my career, I think it applies then to encourage people to redefine balance. So I'm an athlete, I'm a runner, I'm a hiker, I'm a yogi, I'm a weightlifter. And when I'm training for a race, I have to run faster in order to like race faster, right? I can't just keep running at the same pace, the same runs and still reach a goal in a race. And so that means that some of the training runs are really uncomfortable. And the same thing in yoga is like holding some of those positions for a really long time is sometimes really uncomfortable and you have to sit in that discomfort. So I think that allowing ourselves to be uncomfortable, which sometimes means pushing the boundaries of what feels like balance, is part of it. But then also recognizing, similar to, sports or running or yoga, is we really need rest and recovery. We can't push our hardest all the time. So there has to be boundaries to the pushing and there has to be rest and recovery activities. Whether that's daily, but also, weekly, monthly, yearly, thinking long term. But I think sometimes we want things to never feel overwhelming, and I don't think that that's realistic. But I think it's about figuring out how long what's my endurance for this overwhelm, and then how am I replenishing after the fact, right? Which is akin to me when like training for a race or doing another sport activity.
Definitely. It sounds like, and that was all just great information. And I think it definitely comes with trial and error for sure, because it depends on what different people's thresholds are for those different types of things. And so for the three positions that you do, what's the most fulfilling thing you would say you get from either each of those positions or all three of those positions?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think as a dietitian, I love working with patients. I love working with teams to create sustainable, like nutrition plans for folks. One of my favorite things to hear from people is, "Oh, I've never thought about nutrition this way," or "I've never been able to achieve a nutrition goal." So that's really fulfilling with me is the one-on-one work, I think, with patients. I also really like working with interdisciplinary teams. I think in the clinical setting, a nutrition care plan is never in a silo, right? You're always working with other providers. And so I like that. I think as the DTR supervisor, the most fulfilling part is working with my team. We have, like, I started this position, I came into the DTR supervisor position in March of 2020. And so it's been a time to be in healthcare, and my team has really stepped up to take care of patients, to take care of each other, and we've still been able to like really move the needle on their clinical practice over the last 2 years. And so that's been really fulfilling. I think the DTR role is really underutilized in a lot of settings, and I'm really proud of the work that we have done to be having our DTR team work at the top of their credential. And so that's been really fulfilling. And the internship director, so that's new. I was the internship coordinator until July of 2022. So I spent the last year being the coordinator, working with a director, and then have moved into the directorship position. And I think that the most fulfilling, there's a lot of fulfilling parts about that. I really like connecting one-on-one with interns and preceptors to figure out how we can make the internship more effective. I think, and then how, we can create a supportive environment for both. Precepting is a skill, and being an intern, is a challenging time. And so I think I'm always wanting to create space for interns and preceptors to be like, whoa, this is hard. Can we talk about it? And how can we, make it more effective? And so through all of this, I think it's the most fulfilling part for me is the combination of one-on-one work, whether it's my patients or my DTR team or my interns or preceptors, and thinking systemically about how do we make this system work better for everybody, and how do we make it easier for ourselves.
And I really love how you summarized all of that, and how even though each distinct position, you have distinct things that fulfill you, they all still kind of come together at the very end. And so to kind of turn it to the other side, do you have anything from each position that's most challenging that you kind of had to go through with each one?
Yeah, I mean, I think the two things are, working in healthcare in the pandemic has been a challenge, a lot of unknown at the beginning. And I think none of us love to sit in the unknown, right? And so, and there was a lot of unknown day to day, week to week, month to month. So navigating that as a new leader and a clinician in the hospital was challenging. And we're out of that kind of acute phase now. And so we have a lot more systems in place to address that. And then I think the other big challenge that is probably the challenge for all of us is time. So, making changes, whether process changes or clinical practice changes or changes in our own workflows, just takes time. It also tends to take buy-in from a lot of different stakeholders, and the clinical environment is fast-paced, and sometimes it just feels like there isn't enough time. And so then I try to mitigate it really by thinking in smaller chunks and thinking about what's realistic. And sometimes I'm, kind of to the point that you made about trial and error, like sometimes, I'm wrong. I think something's going to be manageable and it's not. And then, and I think one of the most important skill sets at any point in your career is being able to be flexible and being able to say, okay, I misjudged how long this was going to take, how much effort this was going to take. I missed a step. Let's go back and readjust. So, and to me, like in a leadership position, that all comes down to being able to listen to what people are telling you, and then adjusting the plan.
Definitely, and kind of honing in on the flexibility part of what you were mentioning. And I kind of want to talk a bit about what you mentioned with the DTR credential and how you think that it's kind of an underutilized credential. And so in 2024, becoming an RD, you will need a master's degree. And so do you believe, because currently with the DTR credential, you either need an associate's, like an accredited associate's degree, that whole process, or a bachelor's DPD, then take the exam that way. Do you believe in the future the DTR credential is going the pathway to that? Do you think that'll change over time, given that the RD credential will be changing soon?
So CDR doesn't have any plans to change it at this point, and they did consider it. So I don't anticipate in the near future that this will change. I also think if it does change, we'll have a lot of lead time. This master's degree requirement was envisioned in 2011, I believe. So we've had, this has been a long time coming. So no, I don't anticipate anything changing about it right now.
Awesome. Yeah. And so with the credential currently being underutilized, do you recommend RD2Bs or just students interested in becoming an RD? Do you recommend them pursuing the DTR route or using that credential?
I mean, I think it can be really beneficial and a good way to get job experience, like with patients, especially because the requirements aren't changing depending on the path now that you take to become a dietitian. With the master's requirement, you may be able to get the credential and work your way through graduate school or a master's degree or an internship. I have also known people who have found it just really helpful as a jumping off point into a dietitian career. I think it probably depends on what settings you have available to work in and what's interesting to you. But I think it's not a bad experience, certainly.
Yeah, kind of like it would depend on whether you want to go more clinical, more community, or depending on what realm of dietetics you want to go into.
Yeah, and I can only speak to, clinical DTR, the clinical DTR role. There are DTRs that are working in a lot of other settings, and they likely, there would be benefit to getting their credential for that too.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of just assessing where the student's at now, what resources they have, and kind of what they can do with the DTR credential in the future. And so, given your experience also as a DI coordinator and internship director, is there anything that you would like any intern that either you see or just any intern that you talk to, whether it's before they're going into their internship or during their internship, that you'd want them to know, like advice, good information, or things that they should know about?
Yeah, I think, and I kind of spoke to this and we kind of talked about it, but I think all of your experiences are relevant, and being able to connect prior non-dietetics related experiences to your dietetics career is important. So not just putting on your application or putting in your personal statement, I've done this thing, but how is this thing that is maybe not dietetics related going to help serve you in your nutrition career? I think one of the things that can be challenging when you're thinking through school or applying to internship is the dietetics field is so vast that not everybody knows where they want to go. So, right, having clarity in your goals can sometimes be challenging. But I think own that, own being open, having tried a lot of different things in graduate school. Before I applied to internships, I was somebody who did I did a lot of different things. I didn't kind of pick one thing and go with it. That is totally also a valid strategy, but I just wanted to try a lot of different things. And so I think if you can speak to how what the experience means to you and what it means to your career, that's always really valuable. I'm always really impressed when people are able to say, I worked in retail for 15 years and this is how that's going to serve me in my my clinical career or my dietetics career. And then I think there are other people who probably don't even put that on their application because they don't think it's relevant, but it is relevant, right? Most of us don't have a linear path, so make the most of it. I think other advice I have is go to open houses, connect with interns, current interns or previous interns from classes so you can get a good idea about an internship. I think finding an internship that feels like a good fit is important, and there's a lot of things that means depending on the student. So finding out more information, kind of the intangibles, right? The like hours of the internship, the experiences that you're going to get, all of that's probably going to be on the program website. But if you can find somebody to talk to that's in the internship and get some of the other things that might be important to you. And then, through school and internship and early in career and all through late in career, I do think finding a way to take care of yourself is critical. I think as providers, whether clinically or, in an outpatient setting or a community setting or a school setting, we're all still providing care. And so we need to also make sure we're taking the time to provide care to ourselves.
That is a great way to end all that advice that you gave, because whether you're a dietetic intern or a dietitian, we're always giving care to other people, but you also have to give care to yourself as well. So thank you so much for taking time out of your day and also while at work as well, just sharing all of your advice and information with us. So thank you so much, Liz, for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.